Do you think life on another planet is likely to have something very similar to our DNA, RNA, protein system, or do you think it could be a completely different self-replicating thing? Like, is it likely
that's the $1 million question? Because if we're looking for carbon-based, DNA-based life on other planets, we might miss it. So another way to word this, I think, is how inevitable in the biochemistry of an early planet is what happened here on this planet with DNA to RNA to folded proteins. Is that so inevitable that you're saying, yeah, any place we find life, it would have been through this.
It would arrive at the same solution.
It would have found the same solution. Are you prepared to say that?
In other words, even like if we replay history on this planet, right, would we end up with essentially the same thing, or could we end up with something quite different? I said the evolutionary landscape is vast, right? We're just, with life as we know it, exploring a tiny bit of that. And I believe that the idea of creating very minimal living systems from scratch will ultimately be able to help us to address these kinds of questions, right? So you could, for instance, introduce metabolic pathways that are completely different from the ones that we know from life as we know it into such artificial systems and study them. So at the moment, we don't have evidence for silicon-based life, right? But I think there's also reasons for that, right? Like both of them can do can make 4 bonds, right? But it seems that carbon is just much more versatile. But
carbon in the universe is also like 5 times more abundant. So silicon sits right under carbon on the periodic table. So just as she said, they can each bond 4 ways. Everything in that column can. So carbon has 4 electrons in its outer shell, and it can take 4 more, right? Which is a highly versatile situation to be in. But silicon can do that too, but we don't need, I'd be fun to find silicon-based life. We just don't need it because carbon is everywhere in the universe.
It does the same job, but kind of better.
But yeah, so do astrobiologists call you and get your insights into what they might be looking for?